right, everybody, welcome to another episode of our series, the Perceptive Podcast, here on Game Wisdom, where he's on the art and science of games. We have another indie developer on deck here to talk about their background, as well as being a developer in the industry. My guest tonight, he is a solo dev, and he has been making games for the past few years. His latest game, Blow and Fly, a kind of physics-based platformer, was just released. So please welcome to the cast for our chat, Ivan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I was looking forward to having a conversation with you, and I hope we'll have we'll have many great things to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing today?
Doing all right. Busy as always, at least around here. I guess. How are things with you with your games?
With my what? Sorry.
With your games that just came out.
Uh, the game is doing well. I don't know what to say. It's as I think I expected it to go this way, but it's not very impressive. The games on Steam are having a big problem with discoverability right now, unless you market for them yourself, unless you show it to people right in their faces. And so it isn't doing very well, but I still plan to keep going, and I hope that things will get better as we go.
And for people watching us live or recorded, I will link to your developer page on Steam in the description. So if people want to check out your games, you can click on that and see what Ivan has developed. So I guess to get things started with, this is your first time on the cast. Could you talk a little bit about who you are and what is your background when it comes to game dev?
Okay, I've been doing games for the last, I think, 7 years. I made 6 games so far. I like to experiment with the genres, but lately I've been leaning more towards casual puzzle games. I don't know, these just feel more intuitive or more fun to design. And I don't know, I don't know what else to say actually. Well, I started making games with Game Maker Studio, which is a pretty old engine of the first Game Maker, and it just happened when I understood that I probably won't be working as a on the job I was studying for.
Mm-hmm. And so you've been creating games now for, as you say, like for the last 6-7 years.
Yes, right.
So for people listening, what are the games you have out right now?
Okay, so the first game I released was Neri. It's a combination of a kind of a roguelike with a runner and a typing game. So you have to run, jump, and at the same time, the enemy's health is represented by arrows, and you have to press those arrows in order to kill them in the right sequence. The second game I made was an attempt at some really minimalist style. I only used 5 shades of white, white, gray, and even grayer, darker gray. This was Metroidvania, Greaseland. And after that, I decided to to move on from pixel art and to start drawing something by hand. And I also decided to switch the engine, so I moved to Unity for the first time. And a simple casual puzzle game seemed like something that would be the easiest to develop. So that's how I decided to learn that engine. So the first game I made was Plastris, and soon after that there was a game named Shatris. And the last 2 are Immortal Temporos, which is I don't know if you know this game. It's well, oh my god, what's its name? The hardest game or something like that. You just move a dot around the screen and you try to avoid the hazards, but it has a little twist that every time you touch a hazard, the hazard is destroyed and you are moved back to the entrance. So this way you can save some time, and each level is on a timer, so you need to make it to finish it fast, and you need to decide when to die on a hazard, basically, in order to go back and to save some time on backtracking. And the latest game, Blow and Fly, is when I discovered how fun it can be to just play around with the physics. And it has very few mechanics, but I'm actually really proud of the game design, or the level design I made for that game, because there are very few mechanics, but I think I go pretty deep with them. So for example, you can roll around and jump in the direction of your tail, but you can also jump downwards into the floor to make lower jumps. You can jump into a wall in order to wall jump and get higher, and many such things. So every new mechanic I add, I try to explore it to its fullest. And that's about it. The next game that's coming is also going to be about physics, essentially. It's about magnetic attraction, and I plan to have a similar approach to level design in that game too. It's Maggie the Magnet.
Yeah, so you definitely have quite a varied collection of genres in terms of your catalog of games. And I think we've seen, again, like a lot of changes with indie dev over the past decade in terms of like how developers are marketing themselves and the games they do. So what has kind of like attracted, or what has like kind of like changed your mindset in terms of the games that you design?
It actually started from the games that I made before my first Steam release, where the games I used to make were so ugly, and the music I made for them, I tried to make it myself at that point of time, and the music was so horrible that there was actually a video that got I don't remember, maybe like 100,000 views about a person talking about how bad that game is. So no, that was a fun experience, and it helped me choose what to focus on. So after that, I started working with musicians. So that's the only thing I don't do: the music and the sound effects for my latest games. And the same happened with pixel art. At first, tried to learn to do pixel art better, but then just found that hand-drawn stuff and stylized art is a little more attractive. It seems to me like that.
Yeah, and it is important, I think, when you're trying to succeed in this space, that you really do have to kind of almost like carve out your own personal niche in terms of what you're able to do. And I think one of the things that we've seen, I'm sure you felt this as well, is that consumers these days definitely expect, I think, more out of their indie games. And
definitely.
When we say more, we're not just talking about from a gameplay perspective, but even how they look. And it's certainly, as any developer watching us right now, live recorded, I'm sure you definitely have felt it in terms of art and aesthetics.
Yes, sure. And they just have so much choice these days. The day when Blow and Fly got released, I don't know, there were like 10 to 20 other games releasing that day. So you always have a lot to choose from, and the amount of quality people expect for their money is definitely much higher than it used to be when there are much fewer games. So in terms of art, it's definitely the same. If you take a look at the store screenshots or just the overall design of the store page on Steam, and it doesn't catch you in the first few seconds, nobody, well, not nobody, but most people are just going to skip it.
And like we do a store page review show here. Oh, let's see. I'm not sure what you are saying, content about. Please switch microphone to always available. My microphone is always on.
I can hear well in Discord. I'm not sure about the stream.
That's weird. While we wait for the that delay, because I know there's like a 5-second delay when people hear us and such. Yeah, like with the art itself like that. I was looking at your store page, and or the different store pages for your games, and you can definitely see again like going from like the very first games to where you're at now. You can see like that difference in terms of the aesthetic, and it is again I think very important for developers, either new or some of the ones that have been going around for so long, that I guess for you, what are your thoughts on pixel art as an aesthetic? Because it is one of the most popular, I think, art styles or aesthetics for games, but it's definitely, I think, one of the hardest to do, I think, at the level people expect.
Um, okay, that's an interesting question to answer. Well, I certainly enjoy pixel art. I certainly enjoy pixel art done well. For example, from the creators of the recent Death Store, there was a game, Titan Souls. I enjoyed it very, very much. It has some crisp pixel art. Or some games like Katana Zero, which you almost can't even tell if that's like some. Well, the pixel art there is very complex, and it feels great to play it. But I also do enjoy the minimalist style of pixel art, where people try to use as little colors, as little space as possible. I still find those games enjoyable, and I actually think that at some point of time I'll return to that and do another one of those again. But generally with pixel art, I think the big benefit with it is that you can make a lot of animations, a lot of art, a lot of everything for the game. So, for example, in Grizzland, I could just one of my pixel games. I could just draw a room fully, a full new room in I don't know 30 minutes, and I could just have much more content with it. But that's of course not talking about a very high detailed pixel art. But if you go with minimalism, you can make every screen of your game unique in some sense, and always refresh instead of reusing the same tiles over and over again, for example.
Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, and to Rat's Tail's comment in chat, it's definitely getting to the point, I think, for a lot of indie devs, especially those who are trying to build name for themselves, that you really do have to kind of like go big in terms of aesthetic. And it is a challenge, because I'm sure, as everyone here knows, art is not the easiest thing to do, especially at a super high level.
Definitely. And that's since I'm doing, for example, coding and art and game design, level design, all that by myself, I try to stick to a very simple art style, which is stylized, and I hope to win win the players by that. That's a stylized, cartoonish art. I usually don't use more than 2 variations of a color. Like on the thumbnail to this stream, you can see that the fish, for example, the yellow color is one yellow and one darker yellow, and that's all I use. And very clean line art. That's the style I'm going for right now, and it once again allows me to make much more content as a almost solo developer.
And I was looking at your store pages. You do feature animated GIFs for your various descriptions. Did you do that yourself, or is that like part of like like who you work with, like press wise or PR wise?
These animated images I all recorded by myself, and the descriptions for all the games, except for the last one, were also made by me.
All right. Now, I guess another question that I have for you, when I'm looking at like the store pages for each of your games, like when you look at like the older games, they're definitely more like aimed at like the hardcore set, as you said with what was the one like with Grizzlin or with Nari, and then with kind of like your more later examples, you've been kind of aiming for like casual audiences. I guess what led to kind of like changing like your intended audience?
Okay, that's actually very well spotted because I am indeed switching more to casual audiences with the years. And one of the biggest reasons is that when you do something hardcore and you play your game all the time, you get so good at it that you don't see exactly how hard it is or how hard it is to understand the certain mechanics of it. And it's just so frustrating to watch someone play a game and not understand what they're supposed to do in it. So I try to these days I try to make experiences that everyone can just plug in and enjoy. But that's actually not the case for Blow and Fly or Immortal Temporos. These are still some of my harder games. But the next one will be a lot easier, but I hope it still will be just as fun.
Yeah, and getting the market right, I think, has been, or getting the market right for your game is always a challenge. I guess I know looking at the store pages, you unfortunately don't have a ton of reviews, but do you feel or do you see people resonating more with the hardcore style or more and more the casual style for your games?
Hmm. Mm. Well, I think that when a person puts a lot of time into a hardcore game, which there were some people in the reviews to my first two games, which were probably the hardest ones. There were some people who put some crazy hours, like I don't know, from 8 to 30 hours into these games, even though they were supposed to be like 2 hours long. I don't know. And the more time they spend, the more mastery they gain over those games. The more inclined they usually are to leave a positive review, to keep following you for longer. And with casual games, it sometimes feels that sometimes feels like a mobile game. A person will download it, play it for a few minutes, maybe enjoy themselves, but then they'll just delete it and forget it. Maybe that's actually one of the reasons why the Dark Souls and the Elden Ring are quite as popular. You share the news, how you overcame those difficulties in the game with others. And, everyone is trying to prove that they are worthy challengers. No.
And we have seen plenty of games kind of get the hardcore cred from their audiences, like Lambolana, Spelunky, a lot of Kaizo related games. And it is its own, I think, unique market. Now, I guess with kind of going, or excuse me, switching to being more on the casual side with some of your layer entries, I guess, did you do any research into casual games or into accessibility modes or things like that to kind of apply to some of your later titles?
I unfortunately don't do as much. I don't know, research on the market or on what I'm doing. I usually just go with an interesting idea that that I just have somewhere written on the table, for example, on all the notes. But not sure how to answer this question, to be honest. Could you maybe rephrase it?
I guess how did you apply kind of like accessibility or casual features to your latest games?
Right. Okay, so for the casual features or making it casual, I listened to one of your podcasts and you talked about it. I try to make a mechanic that is easy to understand from the get-go. So you just turn on the game and you immediately grasp the concept of what it's all about and what you're supposed to do. And as far as accessibility is concerned, I don't do much crazy stuff, but for example, I learned from the videos by Game Maker's Toolkit certain things like making the shapes distinct and not relying just on color, or no, things like that. Just some little. Well, okay. I guess I don't do things like difficulty, and I'm one of those people who will say that Dark Souls doesn't need different difficulties. But I try to make the game playable by as many people as possible, without changing their difficulty once again. Actually, there's a very interesting test of how accessible my games are, and that is, I think every one of my games, or maybe every one, but the first one. The last few games of mine were played by a YouTuber who can only use his chin. He has, sorry, I don't know how that's named in English, but he has an illness that makes him paralyzed, or I don't know, close to that. So he can only play with his chin and mouse, and he was actually able to play my games and get very far in them, and to get there faster than many of my friends. So I guess they're somewhat accessible, I hope.
Yeah, and as we've said, when it comes to accessibility like this, being able to make your games open to more people definitely helps raise that audience, or raise the amount of people who can try it out. I guess from your perspective as a sole developer, what has been, I think, either the most challenging or the hardest aspect of doing game dev?
The most challenging aspect, well, for me personally, is always, no, everyone talks about it, but that is probably finishing the game. That's always the hardest part, because when you're prototyping, playing around with the first mechanics, everything seems fun. You're always making something new, but then at the end, you just need to put in the hours. You just need to keep working on it, and you need to wrap it up in a way that will make an interesting experience for the players. Just somehow stitching all of those ideas together to make something cohesive. Yeah, I think that's the hardest point for me.
Yeah, and it is a challenge, with a lot of developers I've spoken to, in terms of how do you know that this idea is worth developing? How do you know that this prototype or this concept, I want to take this all the way, or as far as I can, versus something else that you're working on?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, all of them are interesting. This one just needs a little more thought. Wow.
Am I going to throw some challenging questions at my guess?
So, could you repeat it again so that I can anchor from it?
I guess, how did you decide which one of your concepts you wanted to develop into full games versus, I'm sure, the other ideas that you have in your head?
Right. So I have many unfinished prototypes lying around, and these days I try to first of all focus on something that is gray blocks, or what, I don't know what that is. Don't remember the name, but basically I try to prototype with as little art, as little music, as little everything as I can, with just simple squares, circles, I don't know, planes, triangles, whatever else. I just try to prototype with the basic shapes, and if that feels interesting to play, that feels fun to play, or if I show it to some of my friends and they see something interesting in it, then I start making art for those games. I guess that's my solution to that problem.
Yeah, and again, with the games, I was looking at your various store pages for them. And this was something that I think we were talking about on email. I know this is something Rat's Tail and I was talking about as well. With having so many different genres like under your belt and kind of switching between them. And it is, I think, a very valid strategy that we see from any developers. Like, some tend to focus on a single genre and kind of iterate on that, while others will tend to kind of experiment and see, where they can kind of find their groove, I guess, in a manner of speaking. So, with, switching from going, from hardcore to casual, from kind of more the roguelike, action-heavy to puzzle side, what has kind of been your experience kind of going between these different genres over the past 6 years? Like, from a development standpoint, in terms of, like, changing your mindset, or even, like, how you approach game dev?
I don't think that the answer is going to be very exciting, because I get I guess I get bored of working on the same genre all the time, and there's always some new idea that I want to explore lying around, and I want to try this, try that. But I'm not sure if that's such a good idea. For some people, it works very well. For example, there is a developer. A developer from no. Okay, there's one developer. His name is Anatoly Loginovsky, and he releases games every few months or every month or so, and he always makes something different. And his audience is following him because of that, because he can always play with their expectations and do something completely new. But for most other people, I think it works very well to actually stick to the same genre, if you can do that, because you're always developing yourself in that genre. You're always learning new tricks. You're always building from something that you've done before. That was written in some of the books. I don't remember which one, maybe Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, about Kid Fox games, who were developing one game, then they took that game, developed and made an even bigger game upon that base project, and so on. And they're just always getting better and better games. And I guess the same is true for I forgot what their name was. Maybe Supergiant Games, right? With their Bastion, going into Transistor, going into Hades. They reuse some of the mechanics from the previous games, but they always build more and more and more, and the experience becomes much more robust, I would say.
And this was a conversation I had with indie developer Chris Park last week. We were talking about kind of finding your place in the market these days. And one of the things I need to maybe do another video or write about is how we've seen a lot of indie devs who succeeded over the past 10 years have kind of found this kind of like vibe or mood to their games, or maybe we can maybe say aesthetic or tone, that they have either a similar look in terms of their mechanics, or they have kind of like a similar style in how you play them. In the sense that when you go and play a game from Kid Fox, you know what you're getting. If you go play a game from Nintendo, or from Clay, or from anyone else. And even with like a studio like Clay, which I think is a really good example of this, like their games are fundamentally different titles. Oxygen Not Included, Don't Starve, the Hot Lava.
Mark of the Ninja.
Yeah, that one, which is one of my favorites. You can kind of get like a similar, I guess, sense of style out of them. And I think it's one of the things that for a lot of indie developers, especially when you are still, I guess, trying to find your own sense in the game space or in the game dev space, it's hard to, I think, put your finger on in terms of what do I want to be known for? Am I going to be known for, very expressive art? Am I going to be known for challenging puzzles, easy, easy, normal, hard gameplay? And when you switch genres, I think when it's like such a complete tonal shift in terms of the games that you make, As Ratsail says in chat. Oh, and if you want to look at the chat as well, you can find that on the link that I sent you. You may have to mute the stream where you may be hearing both of us talk at the same time. But it's very hard, I think, for an audience to kind of resonate when they don't know what your next game is going to be. And I think it's also why we've seen this kind of, I guess, studio branding be, I think, a very viable marketing and development strategy in terms of what do you want people to get out of your games?
What I want them to get from my games? I mean,
yeah, like what? I guess in terms of like where you've gone in the past 6 years, in terms of the games you've developed and what you're focusing on now, I guess have you given any thought to like who you want your market to be?
Okay. These days, I'm trying to make games for people who just want to. I'm trying to make a very short experience that you can just sit in the evening and complete in one sitting. I want them to have a full experience of the game. Well, ideally from start to finish. And I'm just trying to make small experiences that are always somewhat different. There's something interesting, something new in them, some new twist on some mechanic. And I just, I guess I want them to see that indie game development, that experimentation, that's something new, and don't actually invest too much time into it, I suppose, so that they can just see something new, like try a new type of food. They can taste it, they can see whether they like it or not, and just go on with their life, I suppose. Yeah, no, no.
Yeah, and I guess like again, like you've been developing games for 6 years. I guess what has been like your, I guess like general timeline in terms of how long it takes you to get a game to market?
It's kind of hard to compare because the first games I was doing as a part-time job, or not even a job, as a part-time hobby. I was studying at a college at the time, and I was just working, well, when I could. And for the last half a year, I think I've been a full-time game developer, and I think that I can make games of the size that I want and of the depth that I want in, well, 3 to 5 months. That's my current. Well, I'm hoping to release 3 to 4 games this year alone. So I'm just trying to set foot in game development as a professional game developer this time, not a hobbyist.
Yeah, man. Again, it's always that difficulty, especially as a sole developer, in terms of how much you put out in terms of the industry. Because we've seen some games blow up over just one single title, and some developers, unfortunately, can spend lots of development, and their games are just having trouble breaking through. And it's something that we've spoken a lot about here on Game Wisdom in terms of how long should you reasonably spend working on a game? Because I mean, you're saying like a few months, trying to put out games. I've known developers who say, I'm just going to spend the next 3 to 5 years on a single title, and then 3 to 5 years becomes 8 to 10 years, and it can blow up. And we've seen, and this is something I was speaking with another Josh, if he's watching, on our weekly show about, if you spend too little on a game, it's kind of hard for that game to stand out. You spend too long on it, it may never recoup that cost. So I guess for you, with your own skill set, game dev, and your thoughts, what do you think would be like for you personally the longest you would like to spend working on a single title?
So it all comes back to that question that I want people to have short experience of something new, and there is no guarantee that they will like it. Again, it's another question that you asked about how do you know which prototype to work on. So right now I'm trying to make small games. So again, half a year is probably the most I'll be spending on my next games. But if some of them becomes I don't know if people really like one of them, if it somehow becomes a popular game. I was thinking about this lately, that studios that release one hit game, they're kind of doomed. They people expect more of the same things from them, and they can't experiment any longer. And it would be best for them, financially speaking, to release something similar. That's once again what you just told about suddenly switching a genre and not meeting the expectations of the people who loved your previous game. So I don't know if some game gains some resonance. I don't know if people enjoy it. I might spend 1.5 to 2 years on making a sequel or something much more deep and I don't know. You get it. Yeah, you get it. I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Losing my train of thought here a little.
And again, like I was saying in chat, like when we have our discussions here, I go for like some like the more complicated questions, and you know this is the Dark Souls of I guess game design podcast. Maybe that should be the new tagline. And
Right.
yeah, like trying to get the audience, I think, to follow you from game to game. Again, that is certainly a challenge. And I have to ask, like, in terms of being a sole developer, do you do anything in the on the marketing side, or do you have somebody assist you on that front?
So for Blow and Fly, I worked with a marketing company, which didn't turn out quite as expected, but it's fine. So it was an interesting experience to try to do that. But generally, I really don't like doing marketing on my own. Every time I sit down to do something for social media, I think that I could have been working on my games, I could have been mastering my craft, I could have been improving. So for me, the ideal solution, and I'm very lucky to be able to do that, is to have a publisher. So this publisher is mostly interested in console games, so they just take my games and port them to consoles. So Graceland and Immortal Temporos are already available there, and Blow and Fly is coming out in 2 weeks on consoles. So they do all the business side of things, and I can focus on my stuff. So I'm really enjoying this experience so far. And if it wasn't for that, I'm not sure I would even be able to stay in game dev, because my own marketing capabilities wouldn't let me stay afloat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but unfortunately, like you're not the only developer I spoken to who doesn't like to do the marketing side, and unfortunately, it is something that I think has become more and more important over the past, well, we could say the past decade, really, in terms of the indie game dev space. And I need to do another video about, what are the basics I think every indie dev needs to at least understand about marketing. Because unfortunately, if people don't know who you are, know about your games, they're obviously not going to be rushing to buy them.
I'm trying to change a little bit in this regard. I have a YouTube channel. I do Devlog series, so I show how my games are made from scratch to a finished product. And recently, thanks to a person from chat, actually, Kantal, he showed me the power of Screenshot Saturdays and Wishlist Wednesdays. So a few weeks ago, I started doing that too. But I really just can't do everything at the same time. I need to have time for developing the games themselves.
Yeah. And it is definitely rough, and when you are wearing all the hats when it comes to working on a game. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like, with some of your titles, again, I guess, have you done anything in terms of like playtesting? Because I think this is another aspect for a lot of solo developers who tend to run into trouble, like playtesting and like marketing. Like again, these are two areas where you really have to kind of like, get outside your comfort zone for in terms of game dev. Have you done anything, I guess, on the playtesting side, or how have you found playtesting with your games?
Um, I'm trying to do more and more playtesting as the time goes because it's where I do understand that it is very important for the game because once again you get very good at your own game, but the people who see it for the first time they're not quite as familiar with it and they might get stuck. So I have a couple of friends who are willing to help me out, and they send me videos of them playing. So I later study this. I see where they get stuck. I see which concept is not understandable, and I go and tweak the levels or delete them or change some mechanics or try to add something like a built-in tutorial or more some more levels before that one that's causing people trouble so that they can get used to this specific environment. And another playtester is my girlfriend who almost doesn't play games at all. So I know that if she can deal with it, then everyone should be able to beat the game or to complete a certain level. But yeah, generally it's under 10 people who help me with playtesting, but they provide very very useful feedback. A lot of feedback and very useful constructive feedback. Glad to have them.
And I mean, of course, the girlfriend test is a very important one when it comes to how all your games are played.
Yeah, a mom test would be nice, I suppose.
And when it comes to playtesting like that, I guess, what has been, I guess, your experience when it comes to watching other people play your game? Like, and what I mean by that is, as you said, like as a developer, and this is something that we've spoken about before, that it's very easy to get good at your own game. When you're watching other people play who aren't as good, I guess, what's kind of running through your head in terms of, okay, what is going on? Should I change this? Should I leave it alone? Like that kind of strategy.
I think there are different sources of frustration or misunderstanding or not liking a game. There are certain games that are built to make you want to beat it, and I think that the most important aspect here is to have a fair game where it feels like it is you, the player, who made the mistake, and not the game just being unfair to you. There are many useful videos and talks about Celeste, for example, where it is a very hard game, but it has all of those coyote time, for example, that allows you to jump after you've fallen off the edge of the room, or various different tiny mechanics in the game that make you feel like you are in control and losing is only your fault. These games have a right to stay hard and to be themselves. And when the person is just when the person doesn't understand what's going on, or just finds the game too hard, I think you need to tweak it. Or as I've just said, you need to make some segment of the game before that moment that is causing problems that is a little easier, or one mechanic at a time, showing you one mechanic at a time that is later combined in something different. So just teach them through some easier experiences. Prepare them for what's to come.
Before you this next question, Chris in chat wanted to ask, do you ask people to talk or think out loud when they're playing, or do you just get like the raw gameplay footage of them, trying out your game?
When you're playtesting with your friends, there's a problem that they can try to avoid hurting your feelings or something along those lines. So I think that just precisely examining and watching the footage that they made is more than enough. So sometimes I sit or stand by a person who is playing the game, and I just watch them play. I hear what they say, and other times I just open this 2 hour long video and I go through it second by second and try to figure out where exactly and what exactly is going in their mind for real, like not in the polite way that they would put it themselves.
Let's see. And trying to get like viable information like that is certainly important. And as we've said, like if you just have friends and family play it, they may kind of, wear kid gloves when they're describing what your game is. And unfortunately, consumers are not exactly as friendly when it comes to saying what they like or dislike about your game.
Right, and it's definitely better to hear bad things about your game as early as possible when you can easily change everything. Because once the game is out and you see those videos, then it's some hard feelings. But that's what I was talking about. That now I'm trying to go more into intuitive, casual stuff that people can get, that people can understand immediately, and just in the new game I'm working on right now, Make It the Magnet. It isn't exactly a hard game, but it's always giving you some new environment, new things to play around with, much like something like Cut the Rope, I suppose. So the mechanic always stays simple, but you experience it in new ways every time, and that's what I'm trying to go for right now, and hopefully that will reduce the amount of videos of people not understanding what to do in my games.
I guess to go back to like the play testing and kind of like the puzzle or looking at someone having trouble with your games, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, when you see somebody having a problem with one of your titles, they're not figuring out, it's not connecting in terms of the puzzle design, I guess, what are your thoughts on how to change or restructure that content to make it easier to understand?
Mm. Hmm. Uh, I don't know. It all comes back to the same thing that you're just trying to make more intuitive, more or simpler tasks for players to tackle before showing them something hard. I suppose that this works well in games like Baba Is You, where um, where you're solving something simple first, then this is then you're solving something different, and then those two mechanics are combined together, and you already know how to deal with them one by one, but this time you need to understand how to do them combined. Okay.
And it can be very difficult depending upon what your market is trying to be in terms of how much do I change these games, how much do I just kind of let it ride in terms of what that intended experience is. And I'm looking at the page for Blow and Fly right now, and from looking at like the gifs that you have, it looks like it's going to be like a fairly, or at least fairly intuitive game to play. And I just want to get your thoughts on that in terms of making your gameplay intuitive. Because I have seen, and I have certainly played many indie games, especially from students and first timers, that you may have a very simple concept, but it is a pain sometimes trying to learn what the developer wants you to do.
Well, the ways people usually deal with those problems is either by having tutorials, which I always think that it's better to show than to show the gameplay instead of showing you a wall of text. So you, for example, in that blow and fly that we were talking about, I made some signposts where an animation is played of how the fish would actually behave in the game. So if you need to learn how to jump off the slope, so you jump on one slope and then from it to another, that's precisely what's shown on the table on the signpost. For other ways, I don't know. It's usually the problem with such games is related to their UI. It's always that people somehow can't convey the message of what you're supposed to do through the UI. I guess I need to work on that more, and I'm not sure what else to add to that.
Let me see.
Oh, and Blownfly, by the way, there are some difficult challenges that people can struggle with, but there's always an option to either skip a level. That's what I'm trying to do with my latest games, where you just need to complete, for example, 8 out of 12 levels in order to proceed to the new zone. Or there is an option to turn on invincibility, which some people are, for example, I heard that a 9-year-old kid had to turn it on, and they still enjoyed the game and finished it till the end. But that option is there if, in case you're struggling. You can still finish the game and I don't know, enjoy the art if you like this art style, for example.
And I guess as another point I wanted to ask you, looking at the sword pages, I see you, of course, talk about how many levels there are in your games. I know with Blow and Fly, there are over 70 levels. And this is something that I see from a lot of puzzle games in terms of getting the length right. Because I find for like me personally, I'm sure, and a question for the chat as well, that when I see games that have like 70, 100, 200 levels, things like that, it can become a little daunting in terms of wanting to play a game with that much content. But then conversely, we've seen some players who, if a game only has an hour, 2 to 3 hours of gameplay, they're like, oh, that's too little, I don't want to spend any money on that. So, with like your style and with your mindset, what do you think is a good length for like the games that you develop?
We've talked about it a little earlier, that I want people to have their unique experience for a short amount of time. For me, I think that I personally enjoy looking through my Steam library and thinking, what game can I turn on right now, finish it within 1 to 3 hours, and close it because, well, it's done, and just cross it from my list and learn something new and get some neurons to move in my brain. So I certainly enjoy shorter games, because something like The Witcher 3, I've been playing it for I don't know half a year, and I still haven't finished it because of how little time I personally have to play the games. So for me, shorter games are what I like to play, and they are also what I like to do. And also for Blow and Fly, I made a video. It's probably referenced somewhere on the store page, where I'm talking exactly how long the game is, what you can expect from it, and answering just different questions about the game. And there I said that I personally can finish Blow and Fly in 30 minutes, but that's once again I'm experienced at that game. And for other people playing or playtesting the game, it took from 1.5 hours to 2 hours to beat it.
And another thing that I see on your sword pages, like talking about having these different styles, and of course you mentioned speedrunners and kind of like expert level challenges. So we've spent the last few minutes talking about things from the casual standpoint and that area, but in terms of having that kind of bite for like hardcore and speedrunners, what's kind of your approach on that standpoint?
What do you think about people speedrunning the games for?
Or designing a game around speedrunners and having like more advanced challenges?
Right. So one of my games was specifically designed for speedrunners. That's Immortal Temporos. It's all about the clock, and you need to beat the levels as fast as you can. And there is normal time, and then there's golden time, and unless shorter time that you need to be good at the game to reach. And you actually need to get a certain amount of those gold times in order to proceed. But in terms of, I don't know, I'm not specifically designing any other games for speedrunning, but there are certain people trying to speedrun my older games, and I certainly enjoyed looking at that. I like it when people break the game and just do something completely new with it. I like that. If the person is enjoying this type of an interaction with the game, I'm all in for that, and I enjoy watching speedruns myself. And for Graceland, for example, there was a glitch that allowed you to skip one out of the 5 zones in the game. You can just go through the wall to the next level. And I specifically made sure that when I rewrote some of the code and made a console version for that game, I specifically ensured that this glitch is still in the game for those who want to give it a try. So I'm all in for the speedrunners. I like these guys.
And to chat, like for me, in terms of having one puzzle, one good one, or having like 10 copies just to pad things out, for me, I think I'm always about lean. I rather have 20 fantastic levels rather than 100 just so levels. And I think the market has, really responded. I think in the last 3-4 years with quality over quantity, because there are just so many games being released these days that it's hard to, I think, convince someone that, hey, here's 800 levels that you can play. Go nuts in it.
Yeah. I actually think that it wasn't me who who put the number of levels in there. It was probably the marketing company who suggested that. For me, it's also like not the most important criteria when I'm choosing what games to play. I don't know if you play the game and it doesn't catch your eye, you don't get anything interesting from it, then why would you want to spend 3 hours in it? Maybe it would be better to play a 10-minute game that just gives you some dopamine. I don't know.
Let's see. I know we are about an hour in for the chat. I'm trying to think if there's any other aspects. I guess for you, anything else we haven't touched on yet with either Blow and Fly, your other games, or just anything you want to chat about?
Mm. Yeah, as you mentioned, the questions get harder and harder. Okay, what have we not talked about? Actually, I don't know. If in case some of those games catches your eye, as I mentioned, I have Devlogs. They're series where I show everything. I just record everything that I do in the game as I go, and I later put it into short 3 to 5 minutes long videos where I show how the game how the game went from the original prototype to how it looks like today. That could be some extra material for this podcast in case you're interested. But other than that, I don't know. I'm just looking forward to making more casual puzzles, I suppose, and also some new games that some playing with the genres again. I don't know if I'll be able to stick with the puzzles for long, but I have some more ideas for other things that I would like to experiment with.
Rat's Tail in chat wanted to ask you, how did you do a procedural generation for your roguelike game? And that was a Nari, right?
Right. Well, that was the first commercial or the first finished game that I ever made. So, and there wasn't quite as much information on how do you do something like that at that point of time. So I just went with my own crazy code that I don't want to look at right now. It's simply okay. So I made some snippets in the code that represent, for example, a 4 blocks wide platform, and then it can go. The next one can go two blocks high. I don't know. So, there are just some predefined shapes that they use, and they are placed one after another, and they can have some randomization within themselves too. So how wide this is going to be, how high this is going to be, and I'm just trying to make sure that the level is actually beatable, and that is usually achieved by adding some space between the two obstacle shapes that I've come up with. So I give you some space so that you can simply run forward, and then there is a new obstacle that you need to jump through or use skills to get around and so on.
Let's see. Raciel said it's like Markov chains.
I'm not sure I know what that is. I'm sorry.
I'm not familiar with the term either. Let's see. So, while we wait for, oh wait, here's no, he says we saw like the 5-10 second delay. While we're waiting for that delay to come through, one more question. I see a lot of people commenting on the music in your games. Do you do all the music and sounds yourself?
No, as I mentioned, I after my game got laughed at for its horrible music, I decided that I want to focus mostly on programming, game design, and art. Well, just to support the idea of my games and to make them somewhat appealing to the players. But the music is delegated. So I hire or I work with the same musician. He's been making music for how many? Four of my latest games, and he's making music for my next games too. So his nickname is Hypersleep, and I really enjoy working with him. And I think we're beginning to understand each other more and more with the time. And now I barely ask him for any edits. He just makes great music right away. And it's also interesting that there's a certain style attached to him too. So it shows in my games that this is all from almost the same universe, or I don't know how do you perceive that? Yeah. So I just don't think that I can improve in all of those fields at the same time. Chose to not work on music.
Yeah, and it's important to find people you work really well with who can supplement your own abilities, especially in the indie game dev space. Let's see. Rat's Tail said is a technique for generating text, usually Markov chains. Okay, so it's a way of interesting. Let's see. Does anyone have any other questions for Ivan before we begin to wrap things up? And while we wait for those, I guess, what can you tease any future projects that you're either currently working on or you're thinking about developing?
So the next project that's going to come out is another physics-based platformer, physics-based puzzle game, casual puzzle game, Maggie the Magnet, that I mentioned. It's a game where it's so simple that you need only one button to play it, and by holding down space for example, your magnetic attraction powers are enabled, and you are getting attracted to a point on the screen. And if you put your finger away, you're gonna just fly with your momentum and gravity. And it sounds simple, but I hope there are many things that can surprise you in that game. And together with it, I want to try something that I saw another game developer do. I want to make a super short, a super small game that will go together with Maggie the Magnet. It's and it will be free. I don't know. It works really well for some developers to release a free game together with their main project. And we'll see what happens. I'm really excited to do something really quick and to have people enjoy it. And I'll finally be able to talk to someone. Hey, here's my game. You don't need to pay me anything. You don't need to. You can just download it and enjoy your time. That's my current plan.
All right. Let's see. Chris asked, do you have any advice or top 3 advice for someone trying to finish a small project?
Number 1 advice, I think, could be that if you think it's small, you need to make it smaller. It's probably still too big, especially if that's your first game. You need to even maybe do something like a game jam where you make a game over 3 days or a week maximum. And there are many great game jams coming very soon, probably this summer. One is Wowie Game Jam by Jonas Tyroller, and another one is Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam is coming this year again. I just don't know when yet. But I saw the announcement today or yesterday. So if you're looking for an opportunity to make a short game, that's a really good idea. And if you still don't have any idea of what that game you want to make is, you could use the topic from a game jam, or you find a game jam topic generator online and work with restrictions. I think for me, the restrictions are working like a charm. The more restrictions I put in my games, the more creative I get somehow. So I'm trying to explore those restrictions to their fullest, and that usually helps me get some good results and stay motivated to work. As far as finishing the small project is concerned, I don't know. It's always hard. I don't even have any advice for that. But I would highly suggest that you join a game jam where you can have a community of people trying to do the same thing as you. You'll all cheer each other up. You'll see how you iterated on the game jam topic, and that's gonna be a great experience. Just don't worry that your game is unfinished, buggy, or whatever. Just put it out there and have fun together with that community. They're always very supportive and friendly.
All right. And Star Dragon wanted to ask, do you, I think they arrived late, do you do game dev full time, or is this still considered like part-time work that you do with another job?
For the previous years, up until 2022, I used to have a part-time job, and that was my main source of income. I saved some money thanks to that. I used to be a translator. I used to translate games from English to Russian, which is my native language because I was born in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And this year I decided that I've saved up enough to go for maybe 1 or 2 more years, and I'll just try to work as much as possible and get better as quickly as possible, and try to secure a spot for myself in game dev. So I'm currently a full-time game developer, and I'm working a lot. Mm-hmm. just like you are, I know.
Oh yes. All right, well, I think that's everything that I have in terms of questions. And I do want to say definitely best of luck with your upcoming titles. And when they're closer to being released, definitely let me know, and I'll throw it on my list of games to check out. I'll definitely, since Blow and Fly just came out, I'll put that on my indie showcase list to play for one of my Wednesday nights. So that way, hopefully that will help you out in terms of getting a little bit more buzz.
Thank you very much. That's amazing.
So I guess with that said, adding to the list right now, do you have, I guess, like any final thoughts, any you would like to, end the cast on with?
The thought that I've been having a lot recently is that game development is a fun thing to do, but as I've seen through the years, it's definitely not what people think. It's not the easiest way to become rich or to, I don't know, live on an island and sit with your laptop doing little games. And yeah, game dev is a lot of work, and if you want to do that, you need to really love your craft. You need to love every moment of it. You need to love the struggles that you're going to face. And but if you have that, you definitely shouldn't give up. I know I'm talking from a perspective of an underdog of sorts, but that I don't know. That's my current plan. I don't plan to give up. I want to give it another decade at least, and I want to see what happens. And I wish the same to you, to stay motivated, to keep going and persevere.
Thank you, and definitely best of luck to you and to your upcoming games. Again, it is hard, and it is certainly not exactly the easy mode for making it rich, as I'm sure everyone watching this can certainly attest to. I'm sure all of you watching you all are millionaires, right? You all have your own islands in the Pacific, right?
Right.
So, I guess in terms of social media, do you have anything you would like to promote? Sites, Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
I have two social media that I'm active on. One is YouTube, where I release devlogs or other game dev related videos every Thursday. And just it's hard to pronounce. How do I tell it? KHUD0. That's my nickname, Hudo. You can easily find it on YouTube. There are plenty of videos. And Patreon, I upload even more updates. I upload everything I do. I do behind the scenes stuff and all of that on my Patreon, which you'll find if you see my channel. I would be happy to see you in the comments to my videos, to anyone watching.
Sure. If you can send that over to me after the chat is over, I'll include that in the recorded notes for people to view. You don't have to do that right now, of course. Let's see.
Sorry, I think I was just... Is there something with connection? I didn't hear you.
I was just going to say that when you have a chance, if you can send it over to me, I'll include that in the show notes when this goes up in recorded form. The Patreon and the YouTube channel.
Right. So can I send it to your Discord? Or?
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever is easiest for you.
Okay, fine. So...
And while you're doing that, to Luki Fa's comment, we're going to put you at too much. How much money can solo game development make? Again, the challenge, of course, is that there are a lot of games that can be made, and you never know, again, which games will resonate with people. Now, I guess the one advantage, of course, that you have at least lower overhead compared to studios. If you're working on your own, you don't have to pay, 5-10 different employees. But again, there's always risks and rewards with everything.
Yeah. As far as my Steam games are concerned, the revenue is currently very low. Like Blow and Fly, after a week or so after it has been released, it's still under $100. So the way for me to keep going with that kind of salary, I don't know, is that I have a very low cost of living. As you mentioned, I do most of the things myself, so I can underpay myself, but not the other people. And the console games are helping a lot because I guess the console platforms are what Steam used to be a few years ago. They're just not as flooded with games at the moment. Not everyone is there yet, and they are filtered. They go through many checks, and you need to fill out many forms in order to get to consoles. So this is just a better platform if you want to consider game dev as a full-time job.
Mm-hmm. And for people watching this live or recorded, I have links to Ivan's developer page on Steam. So if you want to check out his games or find them all that way, they are there. And also, let me get back to the store page. There's one other thing that I saw really fast. Where was it? There it is. And you also have a bundle for your games as well. So if people are interested, they can pick up all the titles and get it that way. I couldn't get a full price because I already added your games to my list, so Steam's not giving me the the actual pricing.
I think it's what I don't know. In my currency, that is about $20 for 6 games.
Mm-hmm. Alright, yeah, so again, if you are interested, be sure to check that out. And for those of you watching this in the record version, be sure to check out Ivan's store YouTube channel and the Patreon. That will be updated there for people to watch or to check out. So, I guess with that, let us wrap things up. It has been a pleasure, I guess. What's the time zone difference right now? Because I think we're dealing with it.
It's currently 10:30 for me p.m.
All right.
So I live in Poland.
All right. Best of luck with everything over there, and yeah, hopefully, as things goes on, we'll see more improvements in terms of marketing or in terms of getting more games out there. And I do wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Not a problem. So, for everybody watching, we're going to end things here for our chat. Again, you'll find links to everything Ivan mentioned in the description down below. Be sure to do all the liking, subscribing, commenting. You'll find links to all my stuff down there and on the overlay. And if you are a developer working on a game or just want to chat game design with me and are interested in coming on, please get in touch. We're always looking for new guests. Otherwise, I'll be back later for my regular game streams. And for everybody else, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where they are in science of games. And until next time, everybody, have a great night. Take care.